The campaign for Mouayed Bashir, a young black man who died following police restraint in Wales, is gaining national momentum. His family and activists remain outraged that a young man grappling with a mental health crisis lost his life following contact with the very people who should have had his safety as their top priority. Richard Sudan has the details.
Gwent police remain firmly under the spotlight following the death of black man Mouayed Bashir, who died on February the 17th following restraint by officers. Mouayed was having a mental health crisis, needed help, and as a vulnerable human being did not pose a threat to anyone.
The GP had advised that they contact the emergency services, which of course they did. And they contacted the emergency services by a 999 call and summoned what they thought was an ambulance. And very quickly, a number of police officers arrived and asked whether or not Moyad was violent. And he wasn't violent, he'd never been violent. And police officers entered his bedroom, and very quickly after entering his bedroom, Moyad fell silent.
My brother's room is right next to my parents' bedroom. And every morning when my mum wakes up, she keeps past my brother Moyad's bedroom and thinks that he's still around. But of course, when reality hits hard, he's not there anymore. So it's the same thing, you know, with my little brother. My little brother and Moyad were best friends.
And when you think about the learning that we've had in this country around the arrest of mentally ill people, there's no excuse for any police service in the world, in this country at least, to do anything but, you know, treat people in a humane and professional way. That wasn't the case with Bashir. He was manhandled. He had an injury to his leg. He subsequently died. And to think that took place in front of his parents who'd called for help is unimaginable.
With Mouayed's family demanding answers, both the police and the Independent Office for Police Conduct are facing intense scrutiny.
Nobody called the police. Why was it necessary for when a man is having a mental health crisis for police to attend? And would have the outcome been the same had it been a white man or a white woman? I don't think so.
Confidence in the police, confidence in the IOPC in this country is at an all-time low amongst African and Caribbean heritage communities. And whether it's from here in Wales, or whether it's in Northern Ireland, or whether it's in England or Scotland, the overwhelming lived experience of black people is one of police oppression, and we don't trust the police. And it's no different here in the Welsh Valleys.
Oh, the family history that when we came into the UK is because we speak asylum, because it wasn't safe back home. Again, just running away from fights, running away from death that's been surrounded, you know, in the country. And we assumed that being here in the UK, a democratic country, you know, that has laws and law and order, there's some sort of safety. But clearly that wasn't the case.
As the family of Mouayed Bashir mourn the loss of their loved one, the campaign to publicise the case is accelerating nationwide.
The impact of the death of Mouayed Bashir continues to be felt throughout the community. Like so many deaths in custody, the family demand full accountability from the police and ultimately action taken to secure justice. Richard Sudan, Press TV, Gwent.
Meanwhile, the UK government's highly anticipated report on racism has concluded the country is not systematically racist and should be regarded as a model for other white majority countries. Requested by Prime Minister Boris Johnson in the wake of last year's Black Lives Matter protests, it claims issues around race are becoming less significant. It also says there has been improvements in the country through the increase in diversity in elite professions and a shrinking ethnicity pay gap. The opposition Labour Party has blasted the report as disappointing, insisting structural racism remains in much of the country. Other critics have said the findings have done little to make sense and mend racial disparities in the country. Let's discuss those two stories with Wayman Bennett. He's a political analyst joining me from London. Good to have you with us. So, two black men died within a month of each other after they came in contact with the police. How bad is the issue of police brutality here in the UK?
Well, this whitewash report points to the fact that there's disproportionate contact with the police in black communities. And the government developed a hostile environment. In fact, it refers to the Windrush crisis, which was a consequence of the government. It refers to Prevent, which was another construct of the government, and yet it denies its racial element. It denies institutional racism. It says it's a matter of narrative and a matter of view. But when we look at Moyad Bashir and his family and the loss of life, we think these are not just words. These lead to real actions on the street. The disproportionality of violence treated to families, and even the recourse to justice is actually actively denied. This country at the moment says it needs more nuclear weapons in order to make sure that you have freedom of speech or freedom of activity or free from oppression. Yet when you look at it in practice, how it behaves itself, far from racism and Islamophobia and discrimination disappearing, unfortunately, it's entrenched at the very highest levels of our government. And, Boris Johnson himself referred to Muslim women looking like bank robbers and black people as grinning pickaninnies. This is hardly progressive language. Right. And it's something that came from our Prime Minister. So I believe this report's a whitewash. I believe to get justice, we have to keep raising these cases nationally, internationally, so that we can get past the hypocrisy and the denial of a government that could do something about it. It's not impossible to control the police, but we keep having reports that simply say there's nothing to identify. And if they don't identify it, how can you deal with it? And I think that these things have to be challenged and changed.
But let's challenge it a little bit further. One of the findings of this report is that the UK should be regarded as a model for other white majority countries. Expand on the veracity of that statement and the truth of it, given these two cases of these two deaths at the hands of the police, and also the performance of the police over the past couple of weeks, the way they have been treating protesters who have been protesting the government's new policing bill.
Well, let's be clear. For the last 20 years, black people have been murdered at the hands of the police. Not a single police officer has been convicted of killing people, murdering people. And to be honest, as long as that's the case, I think that being in denial, our government's in collective denial about what the problem is. And actually to congratulate itself, any progress that we've made is only because people have had to fight for it. The Macpherson inquiry over 25 years ago said the police were institutionally racist and made a number of recommendations. Very few have been implemented. And if you look at what happened at the vigil for Sarah Edvard, who the allegations that there's an allegation a policeman may have murdered her, what you see is the police beat people up. And another report says they didn't beat people up. And I think that what we're facing is a kind of almost Orwellian denial of a government that, has long had this practice. I'm sorry, it's 300 years old. It's had this practice. It does wrong and then refuses to accept it. And there always are people that can be hired in order to present misinformation. The report itself says that you're disproportionately stopped by the police and that the police switch off the cameras at the point of arrest, as what happened to Mr. Bashir, and that this should be stopped. But then it goes on to say it's a matter of perception. It is not the perception of that family that their son has been murdered. It is not the perception of Mohammed Salim, the 83-year-old father who was murdered in Birmingham by a Nazi in April 8 years ago. This is not perception, this is reality. And it's disgusting that we could have such a cover-up take place, a whitewash report.
And the list goes on, doesn't it? Wayman Bennett in London, thank you so much.